Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help. And King of Floors, your vinyl, laminate, and engineered flooring superstore.
Able Auctions and King of Floors. It is Tuesday. All of our guests sponsored on Tuesday by Skipper Auto, supporting Canadian fishing families through a revolutionary seafood buying experience. They could tell us a thing or two about sockeye and sturgeon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Check them out online at skipperauto.com. Apparently, sturgeon is a good eating fish, as I found out.
But it's catch
last
and
week.
release. You got to throw it back.
Right. But apparently it's a delicacy in other parts of the world. Enough about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what Ryan doesn't want to talk about, what you don't want to talk about, and that's the 10th anniversary of Game 7 between the Canucks and Bruins, won 4-0 by Boston, Stanley Cup Final, all of that. Here to talk about it, a man with strong memories of both the 2011
and 94
Stanley Cup Final and the 94 Stanley Cup Final. John wasn't in New York. He was in Vancouver. I want to get him to tell this story, but John Shorthouse, longtime voice of the Canucks. How are you, sir?
I'm well. I just caught like the last 10 words of your intro. So what am I doing? I heard something about New York.
Well, okay. Let's start there, Shorty, because I don't know if you want to tell the story, but it might be out there in YouTube land. But 1994, the Stanley Cup riot. What do you remember about that day?
Oh, God. Yeah, no, for selfish reasons, I preferred the 2011 riot to the 94 riot. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like either of them. But, I was downtown. You guys all got to go to New York. But I was the weekend Joe boy.
Okay.
Low man on the totem pole. However you want to put it. I did the menial tasks. I was the guy who went to Wendy's to get the Frosties. I got the bucket of chicken. So anyway, I got left behind in Vancouver, and what was going to be a party if the Canucks found a way to win, obviously turned out to be something very different. So anyway, long story short, covering the riots live along with the esteemed newsman, Alan Carter, we gained access to the roof above the Penny Lane pub on Robson, and that's where we set up with our cameraman, Gary Tapp. And but the only proviso that the pub owner made was that we had to lock the gate behind us so that no other people could come up because it was getting a little crazy. Well, sometime later after doing a bunch of live hits, we're looking over the edge and you can see the riot police in their full gear kind of moving slowly across Robson Street right below us. And one of them goes to fire a tear gas canister at the crowd about a block away. And it misfires and it basically just dribbles out the end of his gun and starts like smoking wildly right below us. And the cloud we were live on the air, and the cloud of tear gas just completely enveloped us. I don't know if you guys have ever been tear gas, but it's a crazy, debilitating sensation. You can't breathe. You can't keep your eyes open. And we're live on the air. They finally cut away from us because we're coughing and whatever. Mm-hmm. Now we're trying to figure out how to unlock the gate to get off the roof because we're just being completely overwhelmed. Anyway, there were some helpful policemen in the alley who helped extricate us from our position and washed our eyes out with bottled water. And I still remember calling. It might have been you, Don. Mm-hmm. No, it couldn't have been you because you were in New York, right?
Yep, I was.
But I called somebody. It might have been our producer, Dan Shomiak, and said, man, I may not come in tomorrow. This has been a bit of a crazy night, and I can't breathe. And they're like, no, you're showing up. You got to work tomorrow. So I couldn't get – it was anybody else. If it was Carson, I would have been a week and a half off.
Well, Dan wanted you to get some Frosties the next day, so there was that. So what do you remember 94? What do you remember about 2011? Not just the riot, but the game itself, Shorty.
Well, the whole year, if you don't mind, was just such a magical year. I mean, it started in October with Henrik Sedin being awarded the captaincy in the season opener with LA before that game. That first game when Henrik got the captaincy from Roberto Luongo was Tom Larscheid's final game.
Right.
And so that was a real memorable night as we paid tribute to Tom throughout the evening, as he called his last game with me. And then, the entire season was just incredible. I've never been obviously involved with a team like that. Like it was, that team was good by historic measures. I remember, just looking at numbers at the time, and you really had to go, and people scoff at this sometimes, but statistically speaking, you really had to go back to almost the late 70s Montreal Canadiens to find a team in the regular season that the Canucks did that year in terms of they were the first team, I think, in 30-plus years to lead the league both in goals for and fewest goals against. They were right up there in the power play, right up there in the penalty killing. They knew night in and night out, no matter what the score was at any point in the game, that they were going to win. It was such a feeling of invincibility all year. So now you get to the playoffs. And, obviously the first round was a nail-biter. And you knew that they just had to get past that first round and some magical things might happen. And that's what did happen. And now you get to the final. Canucks were utterly dominant against the Eastern Conference that year. Then they come out and they win the first two. And all you're thinking is, well, the only way they don't win is if they don't lose 4 out of 5, which hasn't happened in a long time. It's just crazy to think. And you get to Game 7, but to me, Game 6 was the key one. I remember talking to the Sedins before the game in the bowels of TD Garden. It was the first time the Cup was in the building, and you just got the sense that they were poised and ready to win. They were going to take that Cup in Game 6, and what can you say? It just wasn't Roberto's night, right? And it wasn't his building. And they gave up 3 goals in the first 8.5 minutes, and it was just too much. It couldn't overcome it. And people say, why didn't he start Schneider like he did in the Chicago series in Game 6? Which is, valid point, I guess. They've been outscored 12-1 in the first 2 games in Boston. But Roberto was coming off a 1-0 shutout in Game 5, and he would have been the Conn Smythe winner.
Yeah.
He would have been the Conn Smythe winner. Anyway, so now I'll take you to Game 7, and what do I remember about that? I remember being really nervous all day. Just butterflies. Because you knew, it was over, one way or the other. You knew that almost something had to give. The home team had won every game. The Canucks were depleted. Thomas was playing marvelously. So was Roberto, particularly in Vancouver. But something gave. And, when they gave the shorthanded goal was a real backbreaker. Yeah. I think that was at 2-0, wasn't it? And the Canucks had power play and a chance to get within 1. And to give up that shorthanded goal was just so deflating. It was such an exhilarating ride for so long, and to have it end, it felt like so suddenly. You hadn't had that feeling of emptiness, which we've had a fair bit in Vancouver, going back about 5 decades, but you hadn't had that feeling in so long, it felt like, because the team was so good and they seemed invincible. And then the next thing I remember about that night is I don't remember what the technology was at the time. I don't know if we had Twitter or if we were just watching the news or getting text messages or emails, but we were getting word that it was already starting to get a little nasty downtown. And so that was a real, almost a capper on a disappointing night to have it go off the rails like it did. But I choose to be like Ryan. I try, and the weird thing about Ryan is he's so negative about everything in life. All he wants to remember is the positives of 2011. Yeah. But there were so many positives that I try to focus on those. It's not a day of the week if Ryan's not complaining about SkyTrain or something, is it?
Bang on.
As more positive, John. So many memorable goals in that playoff run. Burrows, Bieksa, Kessler put the team on his back in that Nashville series. For you, which goal was it that sticks out?
Oh, Burrows, and not because of the call. Just because of the. Oh my gosh! What? How do you spell relief, right? That Burrows goal was the equivalent of the 3 overtime winners in '94 in the first round against Calgary, because the stakes were the very same. If the Canucks hadn't beaten Chicago in '11, and if the Canucks hadn't beaten Calgary in '94, those teams were going to get gutted, both of them. I can't speak. I wasn't around the team as closely in '94, so I don't know if Pat Quinn would have been safe as coach, probably, but the roster would have been overhauled like you wouldn't believe. I mean, that was supposed to be a really good team that underachieved in the regular season. So, those overtime winners saved the Canucks from being overhauled in '94, and the same thing for the Burrows goal in 2011. He would have been fired. Maybe the Sedins get traded. I don't know what would have happened, but if they lost 3 years in a row to the Blackhawks, change would have been instituted immediately. And so, the Burrows goal for me. But there were so many. The Bieksa goal against San Jose. You talk about the Kessler game when he took over, but wasn't it Kessler in that same game 5 when Bieksa scored? He scored late to force overtime and allow Bieksa to win and send them to the Stanley Cup Final. So a lot of good memories.
Shorty, one more before we let you go. How would you describe the current state of the Canucks franchise?
June 15th, Donnie. Come on.
You want to keep reminiscing?
Yeah, could we? Did I mention it's John Garrett's birthday this week?
Oh, happy birthday, John.
Listen, there's a lot of work to be done here. And when you get down to the nitty-gritty, if you will, I'm always the wrong guy to talk to, because, and Rick can attest to this, when we hired him at Mojo, I think it was.
Mojo, yeah, that's it, Mojo Radio.
Director.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Rick, because Rick obviously had the penchant for, he basically was born with a phone attached to his ear, the number of every age is in North America. And I remember saying to Rick, just so you know, boss, don't expect me to break any stories, because as soon as I break one, you're going to want me to break another one. So that's not. But that's kind of the way, that's kind of the way I go. I don't delve too deeply into what the machinations are of who they should buy out and what should be done here and there. Just tell me who's on the team and I'll call the game. But you asked me, what do I think of the state of the Canucks right now?
Yeah.
I think that I had a tough time seeing a great turnaround this particular season. I choose to be mistaken on that, because I have been wrong many times before. But I love a lot of the pieces they have in place. I think there is every reason to foresee a bright future once they are able to get themselves out from under a few of the contracts that they have, and I think we know what I'm talking about. They have pieces in place. I think they have a good coaching staff. I thought the news that they retained pretty much everyone and brought Ian Clark back on a 5-year deal. I think the pieces are there, and I think they can make steps this coming season. But I think we're probably another season off before I start looking at this team and starting to have some of the same feelings where you go into every game every night thinking that they should be the favorite.
Shorty, outstanding, my friend. Thanks so much for this. Appreciate it.
Expect me to break any stories. Oh, by the way, before I go,
yes,
can I go off the board?
Absolutely.
Fraser Valley Fire Ants.
Fire ants. Fraser Valley Fire Ants.
It's not on the list.
I know, I'm going to go off the board.
I'll talk to Francesco and get back to you.
Can you see the logo on that?
Yeah.
I don't get the fire ants.
Is there a lot of fire ants out there in Abbotsford?
They'd be swarming the other team.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
Yeah.
You're going to go Aviators, then your mascot has to be Joe Biden.
Awesome. Thanks, Shorty.
Bye.